Hello and welcome to another prehistoric animal model review. Today we're looking at the dinosaur Tyrannosaurus Rex, and we're looking at the PNSO version of it. Now, I got this one for my birthday last year, and I have to say it was the most beautiful model I have ever laid my eyes on. It is great. I just love the proportions, I love the paint, I do love the detail, even if it is slightly over detailed, which is the main criticism of the figure I see from the community. But we'll get into that later on. First, I just want to say that it's an amazing T-Rex, definitely. For a mass-produced figure, I'd say it's the definitive one. Now, it does come, as with many PNSO theropods, with a stand so that it helps, so that the legs, don't warp. Because as you can see, it's in quite a forward-facing posture, as many modern interpretations, my words are terrible today, as many modern interpretations of theropods go. So, if I just remove that for a second, as you can see, it just stands perfectly well on its own. That stand, of course, as I just said, is just for the warping issues over time. But for now, I want to look at the head sculpt. As you can see, we've got some really nice scale detail up here. Now, just at for the top of the top jaw, we've got this black paint, and then we've got the variations in the size of the scales up here, and then coming down here we've got the smaller scales, and then a few, like a scale ridge on here. So very much larger scales compared to this part of the skull here. We've got some much finer scales along this more beige part, or brown I should say. Of course, the whole face is, you could definitely see all the scales, very defined scales in this sculpt. We have some larger scales coming back up to the eyes here with the crests, and then coming back down here we've got an osteoderm there, and the scales kind of go around the eye. We've got some nice black paint there, and we've got some faded black paint here as well. I think it's more grey, to be honest with you. Very dark grey. We've got some faded dark grey down here, coming down here, which I think is a nice touch. That they made it faded and not just obscenely dark. And then we've got it coming down here as well. We've got the larger scales again at the front of the jaw, and then the much more defined ones along here. If I can bring it a bit closer, as you can see, just amazing definition on those scales, amazing detail, and of course the teeth are amazingly sculpted. I have to say, on the other side, it's a little bit of a different story, because, well, not in terms of, hang on, I've got to make room for this. In terms of like the teeth and how they've been sculpted, I noticed that the ones here on this side are actually slightly different to the ones here in terms of their size. They're not quite, the ones on the right side of the figure are bigger than the ones on the left. The ones on the left side are bigger than the ones on the left side of the figure, which is a little bit of a disappointment in terms of, like, symmetry and stuff. But it's something I can overlook a little bit. Amazing appearance of like a wet look on the gums here, and then if we just look inside, you could see amazing detail with the nasal passages there, and then the marks and creases and stuff in the mouth. Just amazing detail. You can almost imagine like a bloody corpse in there. yeah, and then we've got our tongue, and then of course the mouth is articulated. It closes really nice and flush to kind of make this neutral look on the Rex while it's walking. It's kind of not very bothered. But I think a really good thing about this figure is that when you do get the figure nice, when the jaw is nice and open, you can see that it looks much more aggressive. I think that's a really nice touch, how it can alter its persona just by opening the jaw like that. It's really nice. And then coming down here, we've got some lighter paint, some stripes coming along the back, especially the lighter paint going along the torso here. It's a much more chunkier figure than a lot of figures, like you see with the like the Papo running T-Rex, which I really like. It's definitely a chonk is definitely a feature of the modern view of Tyrannosaurus Rex. Really nicely, you can see a bit of if my shadow doesn't get in the way, I'm going to have to fix that eventually because it does get in the way. But as you can see, we've got really nice definition in the muscles. It's very subtle, but you can see it, which I do like very, very much. And as we go down the leg, you can see that we've got some really nice kind of smaller scoots, and they're not obscenely huge like on a lot of figures where they're really exaggerated. The claws are decently painted, I would say. They're not amazing, but they're pretty good. Definitely passable for this figure. Not really sure why it needs to focus on it a bit. Maybe it's because I keep moving it. I don't know. Focus camera, there we go. I don't know why there's this darker paint here. Really not sure about that. But I don't know. It looks, I guess it adds a bit of variation to the feet. And then coming up, we've got this really nice, lifelike tail, because it's just really, it's a perfect length. I think that in terms of just the appearance and the proportion of the figure, the proportions don't look off at all. I'll get to that in a second. The tail just looks really like it's really in a big sweeping movement as the T-Rex is moving and balancing. If we just go and zoom out, you can see it's just a really nice looking figure, and you can really see that it's kind of posturing in a way that it's either aggressively pursuing its prey, or it's about to pursue its prey, or it's just kind of looks like it's meandering around, just kind of sniffing around, seeing what scents it can pick up. Really nice way. There's really nice ways you can display the figure, I think. And as I said, the proportions are really nice. Head and the neck is really bulky, but so is the body. You can really see that chunk on there. And then you got the really nice sweeping tail, nice and long. Really adds to the presence of the figure, I think. Yeah, the shelf presence as well, especially as the paint really accentuates that as well, because you've got the darker stripes on the tail there as well. Yeah, so really nice figure. Now, if I can zoom in a lot more, as you can see, we have some slight problems with like the over texturing. I would definitely say that this is not a huge downside of the figure. It's just that one complaint that the community had was that the figure is just a little bit too scaly. It's not fine enough. It needs to. It is something that can put you off if you're just really that picky about it. But honestly, for most people, I would say, and that's not really a problem, because it is just, I don't even know if I really have to say it, but it's an amazing looking figure. I think most people would agree, unless your collection is just comprised entirely of high-end resin models, in which case, fair enough. But I mean, let's face it, barely any of us have the money to be able to afford those. On everything Dinosaur, this is about $54.99, so it's quite pricey, but I definitely think it's worth it. As it's just a stunning looking figure, really realistic, really scary, especially when it's got its jaw open. So it's really got that shelf presence, and as I said before, it's got that really nice long tail that really adds to the presence. And of course, you've got the chonk as well in the body sculpt there to really help with that as well. Now, one other thing I didn't go over is the other side of the figure too much. I did look at the head sculpt a bit, but not too much the other side of the figure. As you could see, it's a bit more stretched. There's not too much definition on this side of the body. That's because it's turning to its right, so it's the muscles on here and the scales are going to be a bit more stretched. You can still see a lot of definition though in the leg. Of course, you've got the muscles here, and you've got its calf, and again on this side you've still got those really nice fine scoops. I think that on mine, actually now that I think about it, the left leg is painted slightly darker, which is fine. I think that's a better look for it, to be honest. I like the darker foot compared to the lighter foot on the right side. But yeah, that's this side of the figure, just to give you another look. There's the tail. I still think that it's always better to show its right side. That's definitely how it's meant to be displayed, I think. I'll just move that. So yeah, definitely think how it's meant to be displayed from this side, so people can see its face a bit more, you know. Now, this little stand that we've got here, it comes with a lot of PNSO theropods. We just stick it underneath its torso there, and it will help support it. I usually put it there. It'll help support it if it's getting a little bit, if the legs are getting a bit warped, which is understandable for these kind of figures, because it does lean forward quite heavily. The legs are barely halfway on the figure, so it's not balanced entirely right, I would say. It's not like an amazingly balanced figure, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, so the two downsides I can say is that warping may occur. It hasn't occurred on mine yet. Mine still stands perfectly without the stand, as you have clearly seen throughout this whole review, and also the over texturing, if that bothers you. I mean, even from far away you can clearly see all the scales and the bigger scales, the osteoderms, and especially on that top jaw there. It kind of looks, I don't know if anyone's played The Witcher 3, but it kind of looks like those rock trolls you see. They have oh my! It just looks like that. It looks like it's got a really rocky texture to the upper jaw there. But honestly, I like the way that they're going with the newer theropods. The Tarbosaurus and the Zhucheng Tyrannus. I really do want to review those figures. Haven't got the Zhucheng Tyrannus yet. I have got the Tarbosaurus. I think I will review the Tarbosaurus next, or maybe the Once and Future King Tyrannosaurus from Nanmu. I'll see. I do want to establish a nice variety of videos because I haven't got many yet, but we'll see what happens. This figure is not too large. It's definitely easy to display on a shelf, I would say. It's about 34.5 centimeters long. I think that's what I got written down anyway. Yeah, 34.5 centimeters long. Its height is 11.9 centimeters. It's not too large, but it has a big shelf presence at the same time. 1/35 scale for a T-Rex, as is a lot of PNSO models. But yeah, that is the PNSO T-Rex. It's called Wilson, so a lot of PNSO models do have their own names. We have Chuanzi, the Tarbosaurus, I think that's its name. You have Wilson, the T-Rex. You have Caroline, the Corythosaurus. You know, it has those names. I think they're named after the fossils. I'm not entirely sure that the models are based on. As many people know, PNSO's models are scientifically, well, they're meant to represent a fairly high degree of scientific accuracy. So I'm not entirely sure if there's like a Wilson fossil or not. I will have to research that. But what's important to know if you want the scientific accuracy from your dinosaur models, then PNSO is a really good choice. You have affordable models. I say that this one's $54.99, so it's one of the more expensive ones, but they have more affordable models, but they're still high quality, scientifically accurate, and they look great on your shelf too. This one's very natural looking. There was a complaint. There has been a complaint, I should say, with a lot of PNSO figures that they look the same. I do hope to review Domingo, the Carnotaurus from PNSO, as I think I might compare it to this figure here, because it has quite a similar paint scheme. There was a complaint that PNSO were using. We're going very monotone on their figures. You know, the brown with the darker stripes, that kind of thing. It does make the figure look very natural. But I'd say that, especially with their latest figures, the Ducheng Tyrannus and I think it's the Cintalsaurus, they have gone quite out there with the colours. Not necessarily like really bright, but they're really nice and they're unique, in other words, is what I'm trying to say, but they look natural. So PNSO have a really natural looking figures as well, so they have that going for them, as well as scientific accuracy in terms of the anatomy, you know, the bone structure and everything. But yeah, PNSO is great for that. This is $54.99 on everything dinosaur, and I definitely would recommend this figure, hands down. Probably my favorite model on the market, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. And I have a lot of models. I absolutely love this one. It's definitely my favorite. I'm a sucker for scientific accuracy, and I'm a sucker for great models, and this is definitely one. So I 100% recommend it, and it's definitely worth the price.